I think most companies get it missed, right? Oh, I could just hire someone, pay him a payroll, and that's my cost. No, it's usually double the payroll to support one as it is to just pay for the rep. So you have to think 2x of whatever you're going to pay the rep. It's also going to be that same amount to support them. And what does support mean? Data licenses, contacts, counts, a dialer, an email tool, cadences being built, email platforms, a manager, a compensation structure, tracking and dashboards and CRMs and sales engagement tools. Like that's where it starts getting expensive if you do it at a small level.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Gabe, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Mike. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation, and I can't wait to get into it.
You're very kind, Gabe. You're very kind indeed. So I'm really looking forward to this. It'll be a great conversation. The pre-record was fantastic, so the record will be amazing as well. So just talk about, so basically, who are you? What do you do? And something unusual about yourself that people may not know.
Yeah, so I am the CEO of Alleyoop. We are one of the leaders in sales development as a service. Simply put, we provide, build out, run, and architect SDR sales development functions for companies. So companies who are startups or founder-led sales companies come to us to build out the function from scratch for them because they don't maybe have the wherewithal or capital to do so. And then we work with huge enterprise organizations. ZoomInfo, Adobe, Peloton rely on our SDRs to run their go-to-market. So that's what we do. And something that is a fun fact about me that most don't know unless they get to know me a little bit is when I was younger, I used to be a professional juggler. And
wow.
It's funny. Yeah.
So that again, a professional juggler.
Yeah.
You got paid
machetes,
to juggle.
Flaming. Oh yeah. I got paid.
Really?
I got paid, traveled the country, did competitions, did events. Yeah. I wanted to go to clown school, but my mom said no. So I went to business school instead.
So I'm sure that was a better economic choice, but clown school sounds
I don't know.
amazing.
I have some friends that are like literally still like in their 40s and they're pro jugglers. Work at Carnival Cruise Line and Cirque du Soleil, Las Vegas. So very, very different, chosen career path that I went down, but could have been one.
Fantastic. What's the most unusual thing that you've been juggling and how many of them?
Well, it's funny. Actually, this week, my daughter does a medieval night at her school for 6th grade. So it's like this Renaissance medieval night. And I'm actually the jester, and I'll be juggling machetes. Yeah, so I'll be juggling machetes in front of the school. I hope I make her proud. I'm trying to be the cool dad of the year.
Oh, you definitely would get that prize. How many machetes are you juggling?
Well, I could do 4 myself, but I literally have a juggling partner. We could do 7 together and pass them back and forth. Yeah.
Okay. You have to get a video of that. You have to send it to me. That's amazing. I can juggle 3 balls, but I can't do any more than that. And I certainly couldn't juggle machetes. Anyway, let's move on to the questions. So, what's an SDR and why did the tech firms kind of start using them? What happened?
Yeah, so about 10, 12 years ago, the SDR role was really born. Technology, SaaS, data companies really coined the phrase SDR, sales development rep. Now, admittedly, it's been around forever, right? A lot of companies call them appointment setters, and so essentially the role in a sentence is they focus 100% of their time prospecting. So they're essentially calling, prospecting, emailing, knocking on doors virtually to get attention of prospects, qualify them to determine they're the right fit, and then pass the baton to the account executive or sales executive to do the demo and take it to the close. So that's what the SDR role has been and is today.
And how successful was it, Gabe, in terms of why did so many tech companies start using it? What were the kind of success rates? Has the market changed? That kind of stuff.
Yes. So was it successful? Yes. I mean, here's how we looked at it. you're paying an account executive or sales executive, whoever you call it, a six-figure salary, a high commission structure, and you're putting all the responsibility of closing deals and driving revenue on their shoulders. But what they found out is they were spending 80% of their day not doing that. They spend 80% of their day actually prospecting. So do we want someone who is that expensive and that valuable to prospect all day long? No. So they turned into a kind of an assembly line if you will, of the sales cycle. And so was it successful? Yes. Has it changed and evolved? Almost night and day from a decade ago to today. Technology, different channels, email automation, AI, where your prospects are living, people aren't picking up the phone as much, spam blockers. So there's a lot of different tools and technology and things, if you will, that have created opportunity for sure, as well as involvement of the role.
Brilliant. And something else that I didn't prepare, because we always do this, Gabe, we have a conversation, and then something in my head goes, oh, what about?
So fire away.
What makes a great SDR, do you think? All the ones that you've seen, in your kind of like career as a senior leader, as a CEO, what do you think makes a great SDR?
Yeah, it's funny. I always say this, and this is my cliche. I'd rather deal with somebody who is ignorance on fire than knowledge on ice. Ignorance on fire than knowledge on ice.
Brilliant.
And what does that really mean? It's really about attitude, right?
Yeah.
If you're new and you're excited and hungry and have a positive attitude and willing to run through walls and do the hard work, frankly, I'd rather have that and train them up to be really good than someone who is just, so involved in knowing every answer to every single question, but boring to talk to and isn't willing to do the hard work. So that's what we look for.
Brilliant. That's the best in a nutshell I've probably heard about the role. Well done. So that leads me on to question 2. So if you now let's move away from tech firms and look at professional services firms. So how can professional services firms use kind of SDRs for lead generation? And when is it most appropriate, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We are the best use case, right? We are a professional services company ourselves. And ironically, we have our own SDR team and we book all of our appointments through our own SDR team. So is it viable? For sure. And we have staffing firms. We have financial advisors. I literally have a professional tailor, like actually makes custom suits for executives, has an SDR that's booking appointments to executives. We have professional, fitness people who are selling their fitness services to high-level executives. So there's absolutely a need for it. I think it's really powerful in the founder-led sales space in professional services, those solo entrepreneurs, those fractional CROs, those bespoke, services that are available. I think it's great there. And we've done a lot of great engagements with those types of companies.
Interesting. So what do the economics look like? Because obviously, I guess the fear for anyone listening, they're starting to go, okay, get what an SDR does. It's the appointment booker, bluntly, to hand off to someone that is the deep expert or the BD person. But economically, kind of like, does it work? It must work or else the role wouldn't exist. But what makes those kind of economic dynamics work? Because there must be a certain kind of value, customer value, that comes off the back of an SDR booking calls. Like low value stuff, I guess, wouldn't work. So does it tend to be high value services? Is that where it tends to play best?
Yeah, there has to be an ROI or it's not working, right? So economically, that's how we measure it. And we have SDRs that have more transactional, low service contracts, but it's a high volume play and you need a lot of those in order to justify it. We have ERP systems that are 6-figure annual contracts. And if you get one deal a year, it pays for itself, right? So you have to measure it that way for sure. Does it work? I think that's the big question is are we making money on this? And the reality is there's a lot of factors that would have to be determined on whether or not it's a fit or not. Here's what I do know. It is extraordinarily expensive to do it on your own. And this isn't a plug. The Bridge Group, which tracks all these things, said last year in their report that it costs about $160,000 US a year to support an SDR. And that's really where I think most companies get it missed, right? Oh, I could just hire someone, pay him a payroll, and that's my cost.
That's my next question.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's usually double the payroll to support one as it is to just pay for the rep. So you have to think 2x of whatever you're going to pay the rep. It's also going to be that same amount to support them. And what does support mean? Data licenses, contacts, counts, right? A dialer, an email tool, cadence is being built, email platforms, a manager, a compensation structure, tracking and dashboards and CRMs and sales engagement tools. Like that's where it starts getting expensive. And that's if you do it at a small level. So what we look at is if you're getting to that 10 to 12 number and headcount number, that's where it kind of starts to make sense to do this yourself because you can get good price points, a manager, some processes in place to manage that type of size team.
But if you're in the 10 to 12 SDRs. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you're at the ones and twosies, then as you say, I think that it's not just a cost problem. It's who's going to train them? Who's going to mentor them? Who's trodden that path before? Who's going to keep them keen and on it?
And then you got backfilling, right? Because the tenure of this role, a lot of people want to start here and then move into an account executive role in 6 to 12 months. So if you're projecting that, then you have to backfill it and retrain them every 30 days or every 6 months, I should say. And so that's where also it gets expensive. That recruitment arm is also costly.
So that's a really fascinating point, Gabe. I spoke to a colleague of mine in my network about a year ago, having a lunch, and he's got his own SDR team. They do, they find office space for businesses in and around the UK and abroad as well. And he was saying, it's really interesting. I said to him, well, what makes it was effectively an SDR? He's got an SDR team. And there's about 10 of them out of interest. Because he'd obviously reached that tipping point. And he said, I absolutely know. He said, first of all, attitude, definitely. He said, secondly, they need to want to be an SDR as a career. If they want to be a sales exec, and this is merely a short stepping stone, he says that never works out for us.
Yeah.
Because they just want to move on to being a sales exec.
Yeah, I mean, in the interview process, if I ask, what are you looking for, or what questions do you have for me? And their first question is, what's growth look like? When can I get promoted? I appreciate that question and I think it's great. But as an SDR service, there's not much growth after the role. Now, there are roles and you can be a more advanced SDR. But if you're looking to be a sales executive in the next 6 months and you think being the SDR is the way to go, it's probably not going to happen, and it does not happen as quick as it used to in this marketplace.
Yeah, and it may be a good tactic to adopt as someone who wants to be a salesperson, get experience of doing the kind of cold calling and cold emailing, but as a provider of that service, they're not the right recruit for you.
For sure, exactly. And there's a lot of people that are like, well, why do people want to be an SDR? I have a guy who has 9 grandkids and he's an SDR. He's one of the best SDRs we've ever hired that works here. We have people from all walks of life. And, I've seen a lot of
ages, importantly. All ages,
all walks of life. We have people from all different backgrounds. The one thing we look for is, of course, attitude, like we talked about, and their ability to communicate. Like, are they effective? Are they fast and quick on their feet? When doing cold calls, I call it like Saturday Night Live. Like, it's live. Email is pre-recorded, right? You can take your time. You can do 15 drafts. You can cut, copy, paste. You can craft. It's like producing a movie. But here, it's improv. And when you're doing a cold call, you're on improv. And if you mess it up, you don't get a redo, right?
No, you don't get a redo. And you've got about probably, between 7 and 12 seconds to get to the next 12 seconds.
Yeah.
Takes a skill.
Exactly.
Takes a certain skill to do that.
I always say it's very hard to do, but it's simple, right? Yeah. We're trying to get people to say yes to a 30-minute window of time. Sounds pretty simple, but it's difficult for sure.
So does this stat also tie up? So quite a lot of received wisdom now and research that says 95% of buyers aren't in the market at any one time. So only 5% of people that could buy are in the market. So does that mean that for every 100 calls, providing it's a reasonably targeted list, there are probably only 5 of those people that are at that moment in that kind of like quarter looking to do something. Would that kind of be right or not?
It is. But we don't stop and only silo it out to just appointments. That's where that 5% lives. What we look for is the fortune is in the follow-up, right?
Yeah.
If you add to that, there's about 15% of people who are open to evaluating, and timing is the only thing that's off. So there's a difference between open to buy and it's like it's shopping versus buying, right?
Yeah.
Right. Are you did you go to the dealership to go shop, or did you go to the dealership to buy? Are you test driving or are you purchasing? Right.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept. So if you look at 20% of the market, including the 5% you mentioned, is shopping. And then that 5% is ready to buy. We care about who's shopping. Are you willing to look? Does this make sense to make decisions over the next 6 to 12 months? Would you be open to evaluating or comparing to what you currently have today? Those are the things that SDRs have to be good at figuring out on those calls. And we want to pass, we call them warm leads are the shoppers, and hot leads are the buyers.
Brilliant description. Again, fantastic. Because again, I was talking to a guy this morning about exactly this. And he said, what we do is exactly what you're talking about. They've got, I think about 6 or 7 people internally that are salespeople that don't have SDRs per se. But he said, once someone's downloaded a thought leadership paper or been to a webinar or been to a breakfast with us, they're in the kind of market at some point probably to buy. But they're shopping, they're not buying.
Yep.
The job now of the salesperson is to nurture that relationship professionally until they're ready. And at that point, hopefully, you're front of mind. And I guess it's very similar.
Exactly. I mean, here's the reality. We want them to be aware of who we are. And, the response if someone is saying no, it's like, okay, are you saying no or are you saying not now? Because if you're saying not now, let's have a conversation. You get to know us a little bit. And then when you're ready to start pulling those triggers, you're calling us back and thinking of us before, you start making those decisions again. And that's how we look at it.
So interesting. If someone was looking at, someone's listening and they're thinking, I might insource this, could outsource it. I've got a few people, maybe I could build a team. If you look at all of the ancillary things that wrap around an SDR to make an SDR successful, what does that kind of tech stack look like alone?
Yeah, I look at it as an F1, right? Race car. You could be a phenomenal driver, but if you're in a horrible car, you're not going to win the race.
Yeah.
Now you can be an okay driver and in a phenomenal car, and you could probably get on the podium. Now you have to be a great driver and a great car, but if you think about it, like Mercedes has 1,000 employees building that car for one driver. Right. And so it's the enablement piece that wraps around that SDR that again is the expensive part and is also the hard part to master and figure out. And you don't want to really do it for one driver. You want to do it for multiple seats. And so that's how we look. Yeah, exactly. So that's how we look at it in regards to enabling the rep. I don't know if I answered your question, but.
Yeah, no, I think you did because, again, it talks to anyone that's listening and they're thinking, I've got a pipeline problem. Let's say they're turning over 10 million. In any one year, I always reckon if you turn over 10 million of fees, probably 2 millions come from net new business. And 8 million is probably what you've hopefully carried forward. You've retained, you've renewed, you've upsold, etc. So they're going, that 2 million, this year we didn't hit 2, we hit 1. So, next year I want to hit 2. Maybe I'll recruit 1 or 2 SDRs. I think what you're saying basically is, sure, you could try that. The reality is you're probably going to buy a whole world of pain going through that journey because you're subscale.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before, you don't want to build out an SDR function to support 1 or 2 reps. If you do that, you're spending a lot of money that you shouldn't have, and you're wasting a lot of time because they probably won't be in that seat in 12 months. So you have to redo it all over again. And so having an on-demand SDR plus a service-enabled, supporting that is the better way to go. Now, again, obviously we're an outsourced SDR agency, and that sounds great. But when you get to 10 to 12, we recommend to our clients, hey, you can buy this out and take it from there. ZoomInfo is a great example. They started their company using our SDR team for a number of years.
Wow.
And then once they were able to have as much capital and bandwidth to do it themselves, they actually, the head of sales development, the senior vice president right now today, used to work here as one of our first SDRs on the project. So So it's a great example of taking it over and then bringing it in-house for sure.
Brilliant. That kind of like leads us on nicely to a question that I might just kind of like rephrase a little bit. But the question was, what have you learned about content-led lead generation that you could share with the audience? The precursor to that question is, go back 10 years, SDRs were probably doing quite a lot of really true cold calling. Hit the phones, get someone on the phone, get past the first 10 seconds, get beyond that and find out if they're a shopper or a buyer. But from what I'm hearing, that market's kind of changed quite a lot. SDRs are no longer just hitting the phones. They're now looking at content generation and getting content in the right hands of the right kind of people. Just talk to me about content generation and how that's affected this kind of like role.
Yeah. So when we started, we always knew that there was things that needed to be supported that we can provide to help the SDRs get more leads for our clients.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did content-wise was writing emails and also creating explainer videos, like little things like that. We never claimed to be a marketing firm. We don't build websites. We don't build, ads or something like that. We don't do SEO. But little things where like, hey, we'll make an explainer video so the SDR could have something content-wise to book a meeting and use that as leverage. Now what we're doing is LinkedIn social content. Moreover, we're actually having the SDRs every single day on their calendar to like, share, comment, and create posts organically for LinkedIn. We're also creating content opportunities for our founder-led sales clients where we'll actually interview them like this on a podcast and create custom videos in their own words so our SDRs could use that as social proof from the founder, from the lead, or from the head of the company and drive appointments using that as social proof. No different than we would supply them with an email like we used. And now we do that obviously a lot, but that was a new idea we had 10 years ago. Hey, everyone's making cold calls. Why don't we do emails too, right? Or it's like, hey, everyone's making cold calls. Why don't we send notes on LinkedIn DMs too? Now it's let's create content for our SDRs to have more arsenal in their pocket to get more meetings. So that's what we do now. Yeah, it's huge.
And how's that changed conversion rates?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We've seen two companies, and we have this information that most companies don't because we're an agency. So we have two companies over the last couple of years that are direct competitors that work with us. Right. And so they're 100% direct competitors in every sense of the word. And we're doing the same thing results-wise, top of funnel. We're booking 20 meetings on this client and we're booking 20 meetings on this client every month. But here's what's happened. We noticed that client A was getting an 80% show-up rate, actually showing up to the appointment we booked. And client B was getting a 30% show-up rate.
Wow.
And everything was the same across the board, literally. But the difference was one was producing content, doing social proof, creating blogs, newsletters, consistently being in front of people on LinkedIn and continually doing some great content. And the other one is crickets. And so we determined that the reason why that was happening was because of that social proofing. So it is absolutely important and it creates trust, which I think is the most important thing in sales almost instantly. And that's really where we see content being so important in this day and age.
Yeah, really interesting. And I think, again, lots of research is pointing to this in the last kind of couple of years is that, if buyers have got there's 11 touch points before they're going to talk to a salesperson, they often don't want to talk to a salesperson anyway at all. If they could, they'd rather not talk to a salesperson. So the more rich content you can give them, the more we can help educate them, the better in many ways. And so I think that whole content piece is becoming really interesting, along with the trusted advisor is back. If you look at thought leadership, Salesforce recent survey, I think it was like number 11 about 3 years ago. Now it's one of the top 3. So one of the top 3 things that a buyer looks for now is, are you a thought leader in your space? And that's typically through podcasts and thought leadership papers and webinars and conferences and all sorts of other things which position you as a thought leader. Does that resonate?
100%. I mean, years ago, we all heard about white papers, right? And even case study. Like, no one's asked me for a white paper in 2 years, right? And because, but they do ask, hey, what's your, newsletter look like? Or do you have a blog? Or I see our prospects engaging on our content. I post 7 times a week on LinkedIn. Right. Years ago, I never even thought to do that. But now we are tracking it, and we're seeing 50% of our leads are coming in from our, of course, outbound efforts, and other 50% is our own content that's being created. And we're now seeing even more so a partnership scenario really trending as we speak. Referral partners, organic, that dark web type of a thought process, right? Being in Slack channels and group channels and communities are really powerful these days, which is more of the same when it comes to social and content, but another variation of it.
Exactly. So being in a close-knit community whereby there are natural relationships that have been formed and they're trusted relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gabe, this has been amazing. So to conclude, what would be your top 3 kind of tips to an organization thinking about the whole SDR thing, lead generation, should I, shouldn't I? But let's say they are like 10 million of revenue and they're like, from what I've heard from Gabe, doing it myself is a bad idea. What would you say is a good starting point to get into, is this right for me?
Well, inspect what you expect, right? Think about what are your sales executives doing right now and measure it and determine is what they're doing the best use of their time. If you're noticing that they're spending 60, 70, 80% of their time prospecting, think about how much more time and money you would make if they were spending 100% of their time selling. Yes. And I think that was really a great reflection point. And that would be step number 1, is to just do a quick audit of your existing sales team and see what's actually happening. Number 2, I would determine data, right? It's just math to us. Everything is math. If you don't have a big total addressable market, if you don't have a lot of data to warrant, an attack to the marketplace from a sales development team, that would be something you would have to really look at and consider. Now, we provide data for all of our campaigns, but still we don't, we base it on the total addressable market. So if your total addressable market doesn't allow us to go to the market in an aggressive way, that would be something you have to really evaluate. And then third, I always say, try before you buy. Before you buy a sales engagement platform like Outreach or Apollo, or you buy Orem or Nooks, and you buy a dialer and you hire a VP of sales development, before you invest in all of that, try with an agency, do an A/B test, run an agency against an SDR you have in-house if you already have one, and see what works more effectively, and then go that route. That's how 3 steps of how I would look at it.
Brilliant, Gabe. Thank you ever so much indeed for being on the podcast. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It's always great to see you.
And just one more last thing. Where can people find more about you?
Well, LinkedIn, as you would probably guess.
Absolutely.
From this
I think LinkedIn.
Podcast. LinkedIn is the way we communicate to the world. And there's a lot of free stuff. I have a newsletter that comes out every 2 weeks. We contribute to revenuemagazine.com, and for free, you can see that. And then you can also check out all of our posts on our website. We do a ton of podcasts. So a lot of free information about what we do. But if you have any questions, send me a note and I'd love to talk to you.
Gabe, thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking again very soon.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.